Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Mazik, aka Unique Mazik, and I am a Forbes contributor. And it's my pleasure to get an opportunity to talk to new Professional Fighters League CEO John Martin. How are you doing today, John?
I'm well. I'm doing great. Thank
All
you
right.
for thank you for giving me the time.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time, and it's a very busy beginning. Obviously, whenever you're taking over a major organization in your role, I want to ask a question though, just to start off. You've had a ton of experience just from a management standpoint, dating the Turner Broadcasting and other organizations. What's the immediate parallel that you drive from your previous experience to the task at hand of kind of engineering the next step for Professional Fighters League?
Well, I appreciate that, and I do see some parallels, and it's interesting. But just by way of just brief background, I've been an MMA fan for 25 years, and I saw from the early days of the UFC. I believed in the long-term global trajectory of the company, and I've watched MMA grow as a global category. And I think that PFL. I don't believe the UFC will be a global winner take all. I believe the global marketplace, which is the third largest fan sports fan base in the world, nearly 700 million people. It's drastically underserved. Between PFL and UFC, there's about let's say 70 events a year. And if you compare that to thousands of soccer games and thousands of basketball games, all at the professional level. So I believe that there's room for at least one other strong competitor. And I believe PFL, in the time since its launch about 7 years ago, has established itself as a clear number two with a strategy that's not going to be easy to replicate. And so the parallel from my prior experience, I grew up in the media and entertainment business, broadly speaking. I've been in cable, I've been in film, I've been in pay TV, but I ran Turner, which at the time was the second largest video content company in the world. And in the TV networks business for years, there was a huge disparity between audience of leaders and what they got paid for them versus the up and comers. And Turner was an up-and-comer. So while we delivered audiences that were increasingly becoming consistent with broadcast, we were getting paid significantly less. And we realized that if we just went to the marketplace and in a methodical, patient, but persistent way say, hey, listen, we have a substitute product, but we're not getting paid anywhere close to being substitute. So if you apply that now to mixed martial arts, UFC versus PFL, on any given event, like for like event, PFL generates anywhere between around 30%, 30% of the audience that UFC does. But when you look at the revenues that PFL is generating currently versus where the UFC is, it's significantly lower than that. And so my experience from scaling and growing big companies is that I think now is the right time in the evolution of PFL's maturity that it can benefit from somebody with my skills to sort of elevate the brand, get the brand higher recognition, and then begin to monetize it more effectively so we can scale that. It's not surprising to me at all that, that where PFL is today, the revenues typically lag audience. So it's terrific. In the 7 years, it's been able to get a terrific fighter roster, has a global platform, increasing investment going in there, and it's got a good product and an exciting product. But the brand is still not where it needs to be, and the revenues are not where they need to be. That's my job.
Yeah, no, I really, from my perspective, from my seat, I really like that approach, and I do like that parallel that you drew. I think it definitely has some relevancy into what the task is at hand in terms of growing the PFL. I think it's a very coherent and realistic approach and thought. It's not delusional or anything to that nature, which I think sometimes can kind of curtail someone in your situation thinking or believing or moving as if something is something that it is not. And because I think that's the best way to really attack the issue. So my thought here, and if you can, give me a high level view of the playbook, so to speak, how do you plan to carve this niche for the PFL that makes it more attractive to as a brand? Because then that's more brand partnerships that then become more lucrative. It's a team, rights deals and things like that. That also ultimately makes it more attractive to fighters, where there are a higher percentage of them choosing you to continue to strengthen that roster.
Absolutely. And so just to level set where the organization is today, of the top 300 fighters, ranked fighters, and it's a third-party ranking. I believe it's ESPN, but of the top 300 ranked fighters in the world, PFL has about 80. And I mention that because a lot of people wouldn't realize that or wouldn't think that. So it's about a third of the top fighters. And if you look at the top 25, PFL has about 30% of that. Now, granted, UFC has a greater concentration in the higher part of the top 25, and if you look at the male fighters, we have Francis Ngannou, who's the number 2 ranked male in the world. We have the number 1 ranked female in the world, Chris Cyborg. But they're, so and we've got evidence or beginning evidence that the organization can actually identify, develop, nurture, and promote up and coming talent. So in some respects, as I mentioned, the brand not being where I would like to continue to try to elevate it to be, it is a process and it takes time. And if you look at PFL, where it's a little bit different in strategy versus a UFC, for example, UFC is really, really highly dependent on the US market, and good for them. It's highly lucrative. That's where a lot of the money is. But PFL, while in the US, has taken arguably a more aggressive approach expanding internationally. The organization has already stood up separate fight organizations in PFL Europe, PFL MENA, which is Middle East and Northern Africa, PFL Africa,
excuse me,
bless you, announced PFL Australia, and in discussions in other areas of the world that would include Asia and Latin America, all huge markets. 85% of the global MMA audience is not in the US. And the reason why I mention that is because take Africa, for example, where on July 19th, it was the first time there was a premium MMA event ever held on the continent of Africa. Millions of African viewers actually tuned in and saw that event. And if you think about Africa, UFC doesn't have a presence there. And at most, UFC internationally will come in and do one event, and somebody has described it to me. It's almost like a local circus company. They come in, they set up a tent, they hang out for a week, they charm the fans, but they're gone. We're setting up international leagues where we're actually going to have boots on the ground. We're going to actually be in and around the local fighters. Outside the US, there's so many great and wonderful, talented fighters that have no path to get to a global stage. PFL's got aspirations to try to provide that in ways that even UFC doesn't. And I think, and there are venues outside the US, like Paris, France, for example, which sold out and sold 16,000 capacity seats. Johannesburg was sold out. Cape Town was sold out. We have the ability in certain areas of the world where we could literally put, well north of 10,000 people, butts and seats, they say. In the US, I think we have to utilize every bit of our storytelling capability to try to elevate that brand, and it takes time. So I like where it is right now in the evolution. I think I'm realistic. I think my 3+ decades of experience in media provides me a little bit of a conviction, but patience, if you will. I'm not a terribly patient person, but understanding that monetization takes some time. We have to get great at executing. Media rights is a big area where there's huge opportunity. In the US, you don't have to look further than what the UFC deal was. $1.1 billion a year for 7 years with Paramount is a monster deal. MMA is now mainstream. And for anybody who said, well, the category may not be able to break out and it may not be a sport for everybody, I think MMA is mainstream. And I think our ability to garner significant more media rights around the world, sponsorship also lags. But we're getting sponsors now in the same categories that UFC has. And we have to be great business partners. And that's part of my job too, is to make sure that execution is world class. So it's, put people in seats and venues and stadiums, work with great governments around the world where they potentially may pay us to host events, have great media deals with great local partners. Today, PFL could be seen in 190 countries and we're getting paid, which is great. And we need to have, we need to grow our licensing and merchandising business as well. So there's 5 revenue streams in the business, which is a luxury. My job is to light up all of them. But long-winded way, and I apologize for me to say, when we were at Time Warner, we created and coined this term we created a virtuous circle of sustainability, of competitive advantage. I'd like to try to bring that thinking to PFL, which is it really does start with the fan. It's the fans front and center, but you got to get them first. You got to get fans engaged. Then you have to build capabilities to delight them with products. That's not only the fighters themselves, but it's your event production, your ability to put on events around the world. Well, PFL can do all that now. So, and then what happens is the fans are engaged. They engage with your product. The more that they engage, they'll spend more time with your brand. They'll spend more money with your brand. They become the best evangelists and ambassadors for your brand through word of mouth. Social media ignites that ability to tell those stories. And then when you do that, then you start to monetize. And when you start to monetize, it gets even more exciting because then all of a sudden you have cash coming in and that you can invest in further geographical deployment. You can invest in more fighters or qualitize the fighter list. So we got to build that, and it all plays upon itself, because then when you start to monetize, invest, it reinforces the brand, which re-energizes the fans, and it creates this circular network effect. And I think PFL is at the early stage of beginning to build those capabilities. That's my job, which is how do we do that? Institutionalize it. At Time Warner, 30 plus years, it was institutionalized. Every business thought like that. Every leader thought like that. We have to do that here.
Yeah. So there's a few things that you said there that I really like. I've thought about, because I've followed the PFL from the beginning. I want to say, I have from the beginning. There was an event I went to very early in the stages. It was at the Chicago Theater because I'm based just outside of Chicago. I think it might have been Kayla Harrison's either first or third professional fight. And so from very, 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 very early. One thing I've always looked at and thought is that I wondered aloud, and I'll just share this with you bluntly, why there wasn't a stronger effort being given to build stars organically through social media pushes and through not just, hey, here's a promotional video of this person, but selling this person and even like a team, so to speak, that is essentially our brand builders. Because the thing of it is, and I remember hearing Ronda Rousey say this one time. She was like, a lot of the fighters limit their earning potential because they don't know how to grow their own brand. So their own brand is, I get in here, I fight. I won't even call anybody out after the fight. I just get in here and I fight. I'm good at it, but I just do that. But there's a ceiling for that. So my thought is, from the PFL standpoint, if there is a team whose job and function it is to essentially, almost in a WWE sort of a way, right, in a professional wrestling sort of way, how do I build this person's brand? How do I coach them to use every opportunity and tool to build their brand? Because it begins to be beneficial for both the fighter as well as the promotion.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm not just saying that. I think you are 100% right, and I can't speak to or attest of what was done in the past. I will tell you that PFL has gone through a number of product variations or changes, and so the reason why I say that is because for a while is sort of a team approach. Then it became a tournament only approach. And then there was an acquisition of Bellator, which had to assimilate those two companies. But if you think about a tournament only approach, probably relies a little bit less heavily on marketing and promotion of individual brands, because that's just a pure meritocracy, right? I mean, it's like if you win in a tournament and you advance, it's just, your record is going to speak for itself. And the international leagues that we're establishing and are stood up, they are going to continue to be win in advance, but they're local fighters. And the idea is that if you win the local tournament, then you can advance into the global roster and the global events. And those are the big events that we have to then get better at monetizing. But come back to what you said, I'm going to be spending a lot of time trying to instill the ability in this organization to amplify those fighters. We have to get the fighters, we have to get their personalities known. We have to get them to tell us their stories. We have to then, as you said, take those long form stories that that PFL is already doing, and they're actually quite good. We have to chop them up though and slice them and dice them and make them snackable and make them so when people are on TikTok or Instagram Reels or short videos on YouTube, they don't have to watch a long form show. They can watch these little things, these podcasts, opinions, get fighters talking about other fighters, get them all, get the weigh-ins to be a little bit more controversial. I'd love drama. What's amazing about fighting, and I've been to countless UFC events, is the walkout is dramatic. The energy in the stadium is dramatic. If you're in a venue or an arena where there's a local fighter that comes out, the energy is even more amplified. But you want, by the time that the first round starts, you want everybody so amped up because they know who the fighter is. They know what the person's story is. They know what their goals are. They know what their record is. They know what they're strong at. They know what they're weak at. And it's storytelling. And thankfully, technology today and distribution today has never made storytelling easier.
Yeah.
And so we this is muscle memory. This is getting good at it. And PFL has good capabilities in that. I want to amplify them.
Yeah. Is there any thought? And I actually had a set of questions I was going to ask you, but some of what you're saying is like jarring other things that I want to ask, and I've only asked about two of the my prepared questions. But one of the things I wonder about is there are some things, and there's an inevitable comparison, obviously, that's going to take place between UFC and PFL. It's going to always be there. It's a double-edged sword. There's a good thing and there's a bad thing. But the positive aspect of the double-edged sword is it's very clear what the UFC does that MMA fans like. And then it's also very clear what they do that many MMA fans often cry out and say, hey, we'd like it if we did that. So you mentioned walkouts, right? They've always been very, very restrictive against allowing too many theatrics during the walkouts. But yet, when you listen to MMA fans, they ask for it. They want it. You'll hear Michael Venom Page or Israel Adesanya say, I wanted to do this, but they wouldn't let me do this. And fans in the comment section are like, oh my God, I wish they would have let you do that. So I wonder about stuff like that. Another thing I wonder about also is Dana has often said he doesn't want to do stadium shows, outside shows. But obviously,
except the White House.
Yeah, except the White House, right? So, but we got 80,000 seats at Wembley or more, and there's soccer stadiums all over the world with all this huge capacity. And now, granted, I've been to countless combat sports events. It's not a great viewing experience,
right? Because you're looking at something that looks like that.
It's not, but on television and on stream, it's pretty freaking impressive. So, are there any thoughts about maybe checking some boxes that the number one isn't checking?
Well, the quick answer is, while I don't have any specifics that I'd be willing to, the answer is yes. So it's a couple things, because you said a lot in there, and so I hope I remember. And if I forget something, then please just follow up. But if you think about the blessing and the curse of a UFC, which is a clear industry leader, I think, and I first met Dana White in, I think it was 2003 or 2004. And I've had the privilege and opportunity to not only follow everything the UFC has done, but I've actually I've met and got to know Lorenzo Fertitta, and I've known Dana on and off for a couple of decades. And what they've done is very impressive.
Yes.
It wasn't always a linear up, though. In other words, they've had their cycles and they've done things, experimented, and they would say in hindsight that didn't work, it was a mistake, and so they throw it out and they changed. And PFL has done the same, and it's going to continue to do the same. I think we, as the disruptor, as the number two, maybe have poetic license to be even a little bit more innovative and more disruptive, to kind of see, well, maybe this will work, or maybe that won't work. From a business standpoint, I said the international strategy for PFL right now is clearly different. And I think it's a meaningful differentiation. It's hard to see if you sit in the US like we do. But when you're actually in territory, it's really encouraging and really interesting. I think for the near term in the US, when I saw the rights deal that the UFC recently announced with Paramount, I said that's great news for the PFL.
It is. Because
it's a validation of the category.
Yes.
And it's a validation that MMA is now really a mainstream sport and can command a tremendous amount of media dollars.
Yes.
And it also is a validation that there are platforms that increasingly see partnering with these big, strong leagues that have a huge global audience, that could be good for both sides, good for the platform, good for the league. And I say the huge audience because there's a lot of new sports leagues that are being stood up now. And you know, some will fail and maybe a few will succeed. But when I look at their potential entire market, or their addressable universe, as it's called, they're pretty niche sports. And that's why PFL, I think, is one of the rare leagues that today, while it's number two and we have ambition to really scale it in a big way, its platform and its canvas is the world. And I think the opportunity is beyond huge and beyond enormous. And one of the reasons why I decided to join PFL, because I am a businessman, I'm a fan, but I'm a businessman, is here's one of the things I don't think people understand that makes PFL unique. In the world of leagues, I think there are only six. I may be missing one or two, but I think there are six. There are six leagues that own everything from top to bottom. IP, all of the promotion, all of the production, the rosters, like everything, top to bottom. And they happen to be in two categories. It's driving and fighting. Driving, it's F1, NASCAR, and MotoGP. And in fighting, it's UFC. I'll put WWE in there, even though it's some entertainment.
Right.
And PFL. And then you go, there are only six leagues that actually have that. And you go, yeah, six global leagues where they own everything. And you go, okay, well, what is PFL similar and where is it different? Well, let me tell you where it's different. The other five are all controlled by an owner. PFL is not. And the other five are worth all between 10 and $30 billion. And PFL is not. So I use that as another benchmark to say it's tremendous upside if we execute well, we demonstrate that we're good for our business partners, commercial business partners, and we got to be great to the fighters, as you said. And the fighters want to fight where they get treated well, where they have huge opportunity. And I think increasingly having a platform to provide them with even more exposure so they can build their own brand is going to make being a PFL that much more attractive. But to be clear, given that we have a third of the top 300 fighters in the world, PFL has a really high quality fighter base already today. We just want to build on that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I totally think it's so in order for fighters to like really invest, and for it'd be even more attractive if the promotion is investing in the building of their personal brands, to their social media, the whole nine. I think it's just better for everyone. So one thing,
because like you said, it's also becomes free promotion for us because they're talking about PFL. Like the one thing you mentioned about the feedback that UFC has consistently gotten, the one thing that's incredibly interesting about the MMA audience and community is they're vocal, they're invested, and they are brutally honest, good, bad, and ugly. So when I go and read Reddit, I'm like, okay, they like this, boy, they don't like this.
They don't like this.
But that's a really interesting feedback loop.
Yeah, No, I agree. I really do think it makes it very clear what you can trust and what you can't. And I think that's very valuable when you're running a business. When you look at the current landscape, right? And what's the first thing you say that I think you may have answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. That you look at and you say, "Hey, I love that we do this." And then what's the first thing that you say, "Hey, I wish we were better at this"?
Before I took the job,
Mhm,
when Don said, "Would you consider coming in as CEO?" I
mhm,
said, "Let me do a little bit more of my own homework and diligence." And I said, "I have to answer a few questions for myself. One, um, do I believe global MMA is going to be a monopoly? Do I
mhm,
think the UFC will own the global landscape?" And I did a bunch of my own independent research, including with my just tapping into my own history and knowledge, but also just knowing that um, I concluded pretty quickly and pretty confidently that the MMA fan base is so underserved that it's not a fair comparison to say it's going to be NFL versus XFL or UF or whatever. Like that's not a fair comparison because NFL is obviously winner take all of football in the United States. It's more akin to a Premier League versus a Serie A versus a La Liga,
mhm,
where there are all of these leagues that are quite successful and coexist, and that's one of the theses behind these international MMA leagues.
mhm,
So I think the international leagues are very cool and very differentiated. The next thing I had to satisfy myself with is I said, if, and let me use an extreme example, if when I watch an event, when I watch the fights, if the quality of the fights looks like a junior varsity basketball team trying to play against the Lakers
mhm,
or the Knicks or the Bulls, since you're from Chicago,
mhm.
I said that's going to be hard to overcome in any reasonable time frame.
Yeah.
And that was probably the biggest thing that I was surprised, which is I watched the event and I said I think the and I did mixed martial arts for 14 years and I've done lots of disciplines, and so I can look at ground fighting and tell,
Mhm,
okay, who's really skilled, who's, and the quality of the fights was it was honestly, with humility, it's a substitute to UFC.
mhm,
And I was sitting there watching an event with my son who's 18 years old. He's been in mixed martial arts since he was 3.
mhm,
And I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Honestly, if you take the PFL letters off of the cage and you replace them with UFC, I wouldn't be able to know the excuse me. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to know the difference."
mhm.
So that's a substitute product. So when you say substitute product, monetizing at a fraction of where the industry leader is monetizing, I think that's huge opportunity. So I think what PFL does really, really well, it's got a great roster. It can already be seen in 190 countries. Um, and 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 it knows how to produce exciting events. So that's not easy to do. So I like all of that. I think what you brought up is something that I would say is I think, and I've started to talk with the senior leadership team here over the last month, is the storytelling arc. It's the building the stories. It's building the tension and the excitement leading up to the events. I think I'd like to see us get better at that.
Yeah.
And we're not, that's not to say we're bad at it today, but I'd like to see, I think there's room for opportunity. And I think we need to be more adaptive to utilize technology in a way where we can tell stories in new and innovative ways and in different ways that perhaps the organization isn't doing today. So, and I'd like to see the brand get elevated, particularly in the US where it's not very well known. So that's on me and the organization to get better at as well. Those are just the quick things.
I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't agree more. I do think that the roster and the fighters with the PFL are a lot better than probably people think. The
That's a
problem,
brand problem.
yes, the problem is that there's the walkover from the PFL or from the gym to the screens where the casuals consume is there's some sort of loss in translation there. And a lot of people don't realize, hardcore fans of combat sports or hardcore fans of anything don't realize that they're not actually the straw that stirs the drink. They're going to show up regardless because you love I've been covering combat sports for almost 20 years. I've been watching it since I was 3. So I'm going to watch regardless because I have an appreciation for it. But the bar goes up to the next level when you bring the casual fan in who only responds when there is a name that they recognize. And I think that's where the job of the promotion comes in. It's anytime you throw up or you stand up a fight promotion, hardcore fight fans are going to go check it out. Something has to happen to where the casuals begin to check it out. And I think what you said is 100% on point.
Look, I think everything you said it's hard to disagree with a word of what you just said. The only thing I would even add on top of that, though, is there is power in the platform partner that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's power in, because then all of a sudden, so I watched, and I don't want to mention who it was because of he's a friend of mine, but he works he works at Netflix, and we watched the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight together.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also a combat sports fan, and I watched the fight, and I saw the audience that Netflix was able to garner, and if there wasn't a light bulb going off in my brain before then, it certainly went off that evening, because what that demonstrated, again, on a global basis, is the platform when you don't charge people to have to see the event like the pay-per-view model is. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden you get casual fans.
Yes.
You get the word of mouth people. You're like, all of a sudden you eventize this live sport, this live thing. And there becomes, that fear of missing out, FOMO.
Yes.
How many people watch the Super Bowl? They don't give a crap about football.
Talk through the whole game.
They sit there and say, well, I'm watching it for the commercials.
Yes.
But when you can sample things and it doesn't cost you any money, you remove an important barrier. So that means it's really important for us on a global basis to try to be with the best partners and make sure there's a reciprocal relationship where they're getting something from PFL, we're getting something meaningful from them. And again, that all contributes into this virtual circle that I'm talking about. As you amplify the brand, you get people talking about PFL. And yes, it'd be amazing if you had one breakout global star,
mm-hmm.
but UFC has gone for long periods of time without having Conor McGregor as an active fighter. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be more and more fighters. We have to build the institutional knowledge within PFL to say, how do we utilize the storytelling in a way to amplify the fighter, which can amplify the event, which responds positively to the brand? And then and I've seen this happen before in media and sports. Success leads to more success, and you get this, flywheel going. It's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I agree. So, I got a question about programming and days of the week and that sort of thing. So the UFC and boxing kind of have they've staked their claim to Saturday, so to speak. And even WWE, that's their premium live events have shifted from Sundays to Saturdays. What day of the week, if any day of the week, is the PFL kind of looking at, this is going to be our day?
I think it's excellent question. I think the answer is, I don't know yet.
Okay.
And we don't know yet. Because there's a lot that has to come into play in order to land on that. First of all, it could also be territory by territory, and it will be. Mm-hmm. But it also has to do with the partner, which partner, and how much promotion and conviction they're going to have in helping us elevate the brand, because that can change your luck from that can go a long way to helping you elevate your brand. And one of the things that, as I mentioned, being in a league where we own and control everything, the product, the promotion, the marketing, we have an ability to offer a media rights partner a bespoke solution to their needs. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, we have an excellent media partner in the US already, ESPN, mm-hmm. Who was also in the UFC business while it was a partner for PFL. And that deal it has one more year, goes through the end of 2026. But I would expect that we'll start to engage with ESPN and a number of other potential rights bidders as we think about a next negotiation cycle. But what's going to be critically important is we have constructive conversations about what do they need, what's going to be important for them, because we have tremendous flexibility in the product that we can create to deliver. And again, it's all in the focus of trying to delight fans. And that's where a platform has the exact same motivation that we do as a league. So that's quite unique. If you think about in sports, a lot of times it's like, we're one size fits all, and you either want to be in it or not. And with PFL, we don't have that restriction.
Yeah, no, I get it. In some ways, our conversation is kind of giving something of the answer to this next question, but I want to ask it directly. Dana obviously has his style of delivery. I appreciate it, to be totally honest. I appreciate the way I appreciate the way he communicates. I think he's a very effective communicator. What he wants to get through, he gets through. Don obviously has his style of communication. What would you say is your style when it comes to vocal leadership and essentially being almost the voice essentially for PFL?
I don't know if I could answer that right at this moment, but I will tell you, I have every expectation that I'm going to be, as the CEO of this company, I'm going to have a very prominent face for the overall league and the overall organization. And I've had lots of jobs in the past where I've had a very public facing role and responsibility, and I'm comfortable taking that on. But you asked the question more kindly than some people. Some people will just look at me and go, "Well, you're trying to be the new Dana White?" And I kind of smile. I said, I don't know if anybody could be Dana, but Dana. That's what makes him amazing. You know why? He's authentic.
Yeah.
And he is a great face and voice for the UFC. I think in Dana and a person like Joe Rogan from the early days evangelizing, they've helped create the category. And so I intend to be very active. And whether I take on that level of a prominent role or not, like I'll see. But whatever it has to be to myself, it has to be authentic. I'm not going to try to be somebody that I'm not. And I've always tried to adopt a leadership style that was very authentic and felt comfortable for me. And so, I'm going to do whatever I can to try to, whatever makes the most and highest, the best interest for the organization.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I really do. I think that's an excellent answer. I would say that this is really for me from a few standpoints, from an MMA fan standpoint and from an MMA journalist standpoint. This is exciting for me because if you really love MMA, you know that the sport will benefit from having more than one significant player.
I agree. I think, by the way, up and down the value chain in the sport, it's always better not to have one. Like for the fighters, it's better.
Yeah, it's every institution. It's every institution. Yeah,
absolutely.
I have one question. I've asked this question before at varying stages of the development of PFL. It's kind of out of the left field, and so to speak, but I think it could be viable. Has there been any discussion since you've been there of doing a PFL video game? And the reason that I asked that is because, well, first and foremost, I am a big video game guy. I've covered video games just as long as I've covered combat sports. But one thing that I know is that, especially to the younger generation, and well, of course, you have gamers all ages, right? But especially to the younger generation, there's oftentimes when the quality of a video game essentially teaches the public about the IP. My son learned almost the entire roster of almost every single Major League Baseball team because of MLB The Show.
Right.
Because the game was good.
My son became an NFL fan by playing Madden.
Yes.
No joke. Like my son, who's now 18 years old, he's a pretty major gamer.
Yeah.
And he was not a huge sports fan. He's done martial arts, but
Yeah.
But he now is like a vigilant NFL watcher on Sundays because he's like, because it was the game.
Yes.
And a friend of mine, and again, I was smiling because a friend of mine, I just moved to New York this past weekend. A friend of mine who lives in New York, he sent me a video the other day of his son playing an MMA video game. It was a UFC game.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, my son has never watched an MMA event. He's addicted to the video game. He knows all the people. And he's like, now all of a sudden he's like, Dad, we got to start watching the events.
Yeah.
It is fascinating how it all comes around and it gets circular. So nothing to speak of at the moment with regard willing to share as it relates to the video game front. But I, like you, this is a multimedia business now. And so, yeah, we're going to be looking at tapping into any and all new revenue streams because, and you hit on video games. It's estimated that half of the global MMA audience is under the age of 35.
There you go.
And it skews heavily male. If you're in the TV business where I came out of, that demographic was really attractive and really hard to reach. So now you have, and when I left Time Warner in late 2018, and I've been a personal investor, I've invested in early stage companies largely in sports and immersive entertainment, because when I left, I said, that's the future. People are going to want to engage with brands and experiences. And the younger generation seems even more accepting and willing to do that than perhaps somebody in my generation. And that's what attracted me to, again, PFL. So if it's a young audience, we've got to be present and in front of them in ways that they spend their time and they want to engage.
Yes. So. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, John, it's the only thing, that's all I have today. I'm super excited about the direction, and whatever areas need to be refreshed or will be refreshed, and then even the areas that are awesome that'll get more, that will be augmented even more. I'm excited.
Build momentum. What's fighting belt you have on behind you? I can't help but notice.
That is a WWE belt. I am a humongous WWE fan as well.
That's great.
So
very cool. Well, we have the fortune of we've got a number of really terrific ex-WWE people, employees who are now here at PFL. It's an interesting group of people here because some have come from UFC, some have come from WWE, and the employee base, those people that I've met, they're all passionate about the sport, which is also very cool.
Yes, the passion, the storytelling, a lot of times the passion begets the storytelling. So that's where it comes from. So I like I said, I'm very excited. I super appreciate your time today, John. Hopefully we get an opportunity to talk again and talk about the newest and latest developments for the promotion and the sport.
Well, Brian, I enjoyed our time. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's actually, I like talking to people, but it's interesting to talk to somebody who's a fan and who's knowledgeable. And so I appreciated the conversation.
100%. I appreciate your time as well. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you. Take care now.